And we are live. How's it going, everybody? It's John Little Fox. This is my channel. I talk about anime, video games, cartoons, most notably Sonic and Ninja Turtles. And today I am doing a live stream. Yep, that's right. Um, yeah, I know I kind of said in the community post I wasn't going to do live stream tonight, but because it was getting late, it's like 10:51. I mean 10:52 now, and I was kind of like, I don't know, because I kind of got sidetracked because I was talking to some friends. But you know what? I figured, I might as well power on through this and stuff or whatever. I do plan on going to the gym. I was going to actually like do this live stream tomorrow, but I was like, you know what? I promised you guys, and yeah, so be it. Um, I have a little bit of like a little like my notes and stuff, but I don't like have all of it written out yet. So I'm like, that's also another reason. And I didn't exactly eat dinner yet, so I'm gonna try to make do with what I got. So we're gonna enjoy ourselves, and plus it's Friday, so everybody's streaming. One of my favorite YouTubers, Movie Lord, he's streaming and stuff. So I was just over there. Um, Dr. Hino, he's another person I'm subscribed to, really great indie creator. He's about to stream in about 7 minutes from now. I know his stream is going to probably last longer than this one, but because we have a different time zone, but I'll probably tune in for that one a little bit. But yeah, yeah. So everybody's streaming, but anyways, but yeah. So if you're new here, this is my channel where I talk about anime, video games, cartoons. Um, for this stream, I'm actually going to talk about Milestone comics and stuff in the Dakotoverse. So, if you're wondering what exactly is the Dakotoverse, a Milestone, let me pull something up real quick while I get ready, and I'll give my commentary. Hang on. Let's screen share. Actually, on a second thought, screen share. As a matter of fact, let's take this post down right here. And this will be the thumbnail for this video when I get around to it. All right, let's play the video.
The tagline for the Milestone launch back in 1993 was, "If you're not there, you just won't get it."
It was almost like all of these creators were siphoning my childhood.
These were not images that we were seeing in the media at that time. Milestone was created to be the voice of a group that was underserved, that was underrepresented in comics. And there were a lot of great African-American artists in comics.
Upward, what's happening, bro? So when's my comic coming out? You tell me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not sure yet. If you've been staying tuned to my indie stuff, I'm actually working on something just to give you some a little penny for your thoughts. I'm working on storyboards right now for my indie comic and all that. So yeah, so I got a little bit of a storyboard thing going for the first chapter. It's almost done. So I can probably turn that into either a comic book or I could turn it into an animation. Or honestly, I'm probably going to do both ultimately. But that's what I'm working on. I probably would show you, but um, not exactly what the stream is about though. But let's get right back to the video. But thank you for asking though, and I hope you're having a good Friday.
Comics at that time. I think they were bursting to tell their own stories and not be Luke Cage saying "Sweet Christmas."
Change never comes easy in the comics business. That's exactly what happened in 1993 when four gentlemen, Michael Davis, Derek Dingle, Dwayne McDuffie, and Dennis Cowan, launched Milestone Comics. If there is one word to describe Milestone Comics, it's impact. The imprint that launched in 1993 upended the industry. The original quartet of books that launched Milestone were more than just new comics. They did more than just introduce cool characters like Static and Hardware, who have excelled and endured for nearly 3 decades. Milestone Comics paved the way for other new heroes that better reflected the diverse nature of the world around us. Heroes like Miles Morales, Kamala Khan, Riri Williams, Duke Thomas. These are some of the most notable new characters introduced in comics in the past decade. And you can make a strong argument that none would exist if Milestone hadn't kicked down the doors it did. Let's go.
You had one hit and then two other gutter balls. Nobody likes Kamala Khan and Riri Williams. Miles, though, Miles shit. What's happening in Fierce Sympathetic? I can't speak because I'm tired. What's happening in the Fierce Empathetic Black Queen? How's it going? How you doing? Your videos going? It's going pretty good and stuff, you know. I know you also live in North Carolina too, just like me. And I probably forgot to mention this in the beginning, but yeah, we've been getting a lot of snow, obviously, but now it's starting to go away, so that's great. Definitely nice to see snow after so long, you know, because I've lived down here in Charlotte for quite a while, and it's been a long time since I've personally seen snow. So I'm like, oh, finally, it's been years, you know. So yeah, but if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me. I'm always able to answer. I'm just gonna eat my chicken in the background, which is my dinner, and I'm going to play this video. So let's keep going. Khan, who ruined especially Marvel Zombies. Yeah, like Kamala Khan was not the right pick to be the main protagonist of Marvel Zombies. Like I've said it before and I'll say it again. Like, I mean, even if she was a good character, let's just give her the benefit of the doubt. Even if she was a good character, she's just not right for horror. You know, like she's too lighthearted and too optimistic and hopeful or joyful or whatever. She's not gonna work. You know, I mean, Spider-Man is a little bit too lighthearted. I mean, well, Spider-Man has his dark moments, but I don't think Spider-Man works as a main protagonist in a zombie kind of thing. You know. Yes, there are more snow, like twice. Oh, I don't know about where you're at, but yeah, I just missed the snow. Oh. You missed the snow as in like you missed it, or like you miss having it around. Well, I guess you miss having it around. If I wrote Kamala Khan perfect, she would be a very serious than funny. Yeah, she should. Or honestly, just make the character more of a team-based character, because that's kind of what she really is, though. Is like, because she can't hold a solo run, and she works better when she's around other people. You live in Durham, cool. Excuse me. I live in Charlotte. That's where I'm at. But yeah, let's keep playing.
Go behind the panel with Milestone Comics.
Up until that point, especially among the big two, Marvel and DC, the Luke Cages, the Black Panthers, there may be facets of the Black experience that were touched on, but you felt that you weren't getting it.
I'm also gonna put that out there. I actually do have this comic actually of Black Panther. It's a 4-issue mini run, I believe. I actually bought this from Free Comic Book Day, so that was pretty cool. Too bad it wasn't like an ongoing run or something. What's happened to X Kid, Miss Marvel? I think she's ruining Marvel Zombies to this day. Well, just the show, and honestly, the show was already bad from the get-go. So, you know, MCU.
Facets of the Black experience that were touched on, but you felt that you weren't getting a full story.
Dennis Cowan and Derek Dingle were childhood friends who had taken different career paths. Dingle worked in magazines like Black Enterprise and Money Magazine. Cowan had established a rep as one of the top artists at DC and Marvel on books like The Question and Deathlock. Michael Davis, another one of the founders, was an artist and writer. The final piece of the puzzle was Dwayne McDuffie, a comics writer and editor who had done the Damage Control miniseries and worked on several other books at Marvel. The Milestone founders knew there was an audience waiting for heroes they could identify with and saw an opportunity.
At that point, there were a few characters of color, more on the Marvel side than DC, but Since I knew the Milestone guys, it was interesting just sort of watching them create this whole crop of characters from the ground up.
Dwayne, I distinctly remember talking to him on the phone and him saying, well, I've been thinking about it, and there's really two archetypes, maybe three. Batman, Superman, maybe Spider-Man, because he's a teenager and just learning. And so he said, I think I want a teenage hero. I want an angry guy doing the gadgety Batman stuff. And we need a team book, and that should be a gang, which was really, I think, one of the most purely brilliant things about Milestone Blood Syndicate. And it was also one of the things that I think a lot of people found off-putting.
The big problem for anyone growing up reading comics at that time is that you felt the characters that existed in Marvel and DC were monoliths. They had to stand for everything that the Black experience encaptured. Milestone gave you a nice, broad view of the entire Black experience.
And all these characters are just interesting in terms of how they were just designed and drawn. In the 90s, you had a lot of sort of bad new books that started, a lot of really cheesy universes, but the fact that the Milestone Dakota universe started because the police and I think the mayor's office had lured all of the gangbangers in the city into Central Park, and the idea was to sort of nuke them with like a chemical agent, which was just like, whoa, and that just created a bunch of superpowered hoods, or even people who were just happening to be walking by got superpowers. I thought that was like a brilliant premise to kick off the whole Dakota Milestone universe.
One thing that helped Milestone stand apart from the other comic book companies of the day was the attention paid to details. This is the legendary Milestone Bible, the backbone of the Dakota universe. It includes extensive details on each original character. In other words, the one-stop shop for launching a comic book universe.
The very first document is what was the part of the presentation at DC. I wrote it with Dwayne, although I'm the guy that actually was sitting at the typewriter. Subsequently, there was an expanded document that was the official Bible of the Milestone universe. Dwayne McDuffie wrote that Bible, and he greatly expanded on the platform that the five of us had originally created, and just took it to a whole nother level.
It was fairly detailed, and we stuck to probably 70–80% of it. Ivan Velez Jr. created so many memorable characters for Blood Syndicate that weren't in the first Bible. There was an expanded.
All right, finished my chicken. Now I'm about to get some cake. Well, I got some cake now. All right, let me read some of these comments. I had to ban CJ because you know how he's on his usual BS. So I had to channel in my inner hello to your God, and he had to get that ass banned. Fuck boy. Let me stop. All right, yeah. So Miss Marvel, I think she wrote in Marvel Zombies. Marvel Zombies just boring. They're just seriously like zombie shows, especially The Walking Dead. I don't know about that. I mean, a lot of people do like you know, Walking Dead's, you know, a lot of people like it. I'm not really crazy about it myself, to be honest. Marvel Zombies is being like funny, friendly show of Walking Dead with parody tropes. I have a question. Have I watched Ruby? I'll answer that in a second. Season 7 and 8. If you've either watched Marvel Zombies, again on Halloween, I am not. It watches it. What was I gonna say about Marvel Zombies? Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not really a fan of What If like that from the get go, and then Marvel Zombies, I just wasn't. You know, it's a step up, but yeah, you know, and yeah, Fierce Sympathetic Black Queen. I think I have seen Ruby season 7 and 8. I guess if you want to ask me questions, I can probably ask them. Like, you know, it's been a long time since I've seen it. But yeah, I didn't watch that last season of Ruby Volume 9 when Yang and Blake finally got together. I just didn't like care for Ruby at that point because I just felt like it was kind of a waste. Like, you know, all this, you know, expedition, all this sitting around talking or whatever, and we still haven't gotten to Salem or see what she can do. So it's just like, come on. Ruby getting to Volume 10, you going to pay attention? And honestly, not really. I don't have a motive to really watch Volume 10 of Ruby. Anyways, I didn't even have a motive to watch Volume 9, to be honest. So why am I going to watch Volume 10? I don't know. Maybe I'll come back to Volume 9, I guess. Even the writing got tired. Yeah, I bet. But anyways, Lore Bible. So yeah, usually a lot of people like to like start out when they do indie stuff is like always do a Lore Bible first. to like flesh out your characters and always like you know, you can do drawings and stuff. Like even for me, I have a few lore Bibles I've made myself with my own characters. So like some bios and stuff, a lot of writing, a lot of like details and stuff, facts about my characters, and all that type of stuff. Um, it gives you a general idea so you can know what you're like writing in mind or what this character is supposed to look like and what they're supposed to be about before you put like, you know, oh, you write a story about them and stuff like that, you know. But yeah, I asked Paul to talk about Marvel Zombies. Cool. It watches Volume 9. Oh boy, I recommend watch Volume 9 and made a video. Each volume you don't have to. Nah, I'm good. Fierce sympathetic Black Queen. I'm good on doing a Ruby review. To be honest, Ruby is just not my thing.
Bible that had characters like Quai
It's
and
not-
Dog, which were his Blood Syndicate characters.
We're talking a document detailing every corner of the Milestone universe going into it. Interestingly enough, Icon was originally supposed to be named Paragon, but I do believe they couldn't get clearance for the name, which is why they finally went with Icon going forward. But everything in terms of history and voting patterns, ideology, and dynamic between the characters, Icon was fleshed out. Hardware was completely fleshed out from top to bottom.
I remember when I was working as an editor at Disney Adventures way back in the day, and my boss, Marv Wolfman, we sat in an office together, and then Marv was like, wow, I've got the Bible for Milestone Comics here.
The legendary Marv Wolfman. The man who put Teen Titans on notice with the with that iconic run, and I think he had co-created Tim Drake. So yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. They had done this ginormous Bible about Dakota. It was like a TV show Bible. I don't think anyone had ever done that in comics before. I don't think anyone had done a Bible for the whole world, and they had figured that out.
It's easy to understand why that was the basis of getting Milestone sold to begin with.
Hardware, the first book Milestone published, was about child prodigy Curtis Metcalf. His genius was being exploited by a corrupt businessman, leading him to create an alter ego he used to fight a criminal empire. Hardware was an avatar for the struggles people of color face in corporate America. McDuffie and Cowan reportedly were inspired by their own frustration at the obstacles they faced while at Marvel.
A huge influence on where Dwayne took the first 15 issues of Hardware was Clint Eastwood's movie Unforgiven. We went and saw that, and Dwayne came out and he said, you know what, I think I just figured out Hardware.
Hardware, the whole character feels like semi-autobiographical, you know, like he's a guy who's been a genius and super talented and who's made valuable contributions to the company he works at, but like hits a literal glass ceiling. He's not allowed to partake in ownership and all that stuff. And he gets so mad, he becomes a vigilante that strikes out against this mega corporations of various dealings. That felt like probably what people like Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Cohen and the other founders were going through in their respective careers.
Then there's Static. Teenager Virgil Hawkins was named after a real-life black man who fought for decades for the right to be able to practice law in Florida.
And then there's the man himself, Virgil Hawkins, aka Static, the poster child of the Milestone universe. But let's continue.
In the comics, Virgil gained his electromagnetic powers during the Big Bang incident. He was a comics geek, and his knowledge of science and witty banter led to inevitable comparisons to Peter Parker and Spider-Man. McDuffie and co-writer Robert L. Washington and artist John Paul Leon executed the teen hero concept to perfection.
We were still missing an archetype. And I said, well, we're missing a character like a Spider-Man kind of character. Dwayne spoke of it and he goes, oh, I got something. I got something. And he starts rattling off this idea about some kid that has these static electric powers, and he's like a little black kid version of Electro that does these different things. And I said, ooh, I got the name. We'll call him Static. Because at the time, James Brown had this hit song out called Static. And the refrain was like, don't start none, won't be none, you know? So I said, let's call him Static.
Static was the Blurred before people were using the term Blurred. He was a black nerd. He was a smart kid. He was not in a gang. He was not running around. He was not in trouble. He'd never been to jail. And these were not images that we were seeing in the media at that time. And you also have to realize this was like the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s.
Virgil Hawkins gun violence and the temptation to go out and get a gun to mess with those bullies who've been screwing with you your entire life. That's something Stanley in his wildest dreams would never have written. Virgil is a kid who felt so close to the realities of what I think a lot of comic book reading nerds were at the time.
He knew what the character was about, and he was so smart. He really was one of the great storytellers of his time, and he was authentic. He believed in what Static stood for, and he knew that you could have this character that wasn't just a cipher or wasn't just somebody's idea of what the character should be.
I think one of the brilliant things about Static is that Virgil doesn't really become a different person after he gets superpowers. He's the same kid, same corny jokes, same self-doubt and growing pains and whatnot. He just can control electromagnetic energy.
He was exactly the same age as I was. He dressed like I did. He lived in a neighborhood like I did, actually. And it was almost like all of these creators.
I'm back. Let me read some of these comments. Let's see. We're 20 minutes in. All right. Taylor asked me about Ruby. I watched Ruby Volume 9. Oh boy, I recommend Volume 9 and made a video. I wish Blade be the main character of Marvel Zombies. At least he was serious and smart, being a father figure. Pissed me off that they killed him off and getting Kamala Khan a cringe ass ending with Bubba T. I mean, not Bubba T, Boba T, and all that. Yeah. A lot of us kind of agreed that Blade definitely should have been the main character or should have been the lead. But you saw how they completely canceled that Blade movie because they wanted to push, or it's very implied, we all know the truth, is that they wanted to push other characters before Blade himself, when all we wanted was something simple as a vampire hunter with martial arts and a sword and guns killing vampires, like as if that's not going to print money, but okay. We want to focus on his pink-haired daughter or somebody or whatever. Like, come on. No. So anyways, let me continue with this, though. I'm almost finished setting up. Like the push for the Avengers Doomsday movie. Yeah, like, I don't even feel like I don't even think they have all that stuff together, to be honest.
Are sort of like siphoning my childhood at the moment. I was like, they have cameras in my house? Like, how is this character like so much like me?
One of the things that always meant so much to me is that superpowers don't solve everything. And I think that's one of the key parts of Static being such a compelling character. You can't just zap all the problems away. You can't just zap away racism or gun violence. You have to think your way through them and talk your way through them.
He understood what it meant to other Black kids. He knew how important their representation was. And he wrote it from his heart. And I think that's what made Static so great.
Icon was about an alien being who lands in America during the 1800s and who assimilated the form of a Black slave in the South. But it wasn't just a story about Black Superman.
Icon, that was the first character that they dropped. He was actually a cross between Superman and Martian Manhunter because he was an alien and he came here and assumed the form of a Black man because he actually had crash landed basically during slavery. And so a Black man had saved him and he was not interested in being a superhero.
The great thing about Icon is that he's a character who had these gifts, stifled them for all these years, and he hid them.
He had been here for hundreds of years before Raquel at the time, figured out who he was.
And once this young girl from the hood tries to break into his house on some criminal stuff, she inspires him. It's like, oh wait, I can be a symbol to other people.
The real kicker was that Rocket got pregnant early on in the run. So this was right out the gate, kicking the door open and helping us realize this was not going to be your ordinary comic book going forward. I can't think of any other comic story among the big two where the sidekick pretty much had her story start with her getting her abilities, and then the rest of the first year was pretty much spent with her trying to balance the fact that she was pregnant and fighting crime with this guy at the exact same time.
That whole storyline was told through her eyes, which was actually not something that you had seen regularly in comics. And I don't think we saw it again until Christopher Priest actually wrote Black Panther. Raquel was the Black female character that was leading a comic book series. That hadn't really been done before. Yeah, Storm was there, but she didn't really lead an imprint or have her own comic till much later.
She was in the midst of criminal activity when we first meet her. She then rises to become a superhero. And the thing that I loved the most about Milestone Comics was there was tension across generational lines, like Icon trying to lecture the young teenage gangsters of Blood Syndicate, and then be like, yeah, nah, we're not having that.
In 1994, the crossover event Worlds Collide brought the DC and Milestone universes together. Icon issue 16 pitted the Supermen of each world against each other by a being known as Rift. During their battle, Rift details how each hero's path was determined in part by circumstance. Kal-El lands in Kansas, raised by white parents, and becomes a symbol of hope for society. Icon arrives in the Deep South, and because he took the look of an African American, was enslaved. His powers had to be used for simple survival, because he didn't have the benefit of the doubt Metropolis's white Superman had.
One of my favorite comics of all time is Icon number 16. It's the Worlds Collide crossover with Superman. So it's like the Superman family of comics crossed over with the Milestone universe. Superboy meeting Static and other characters like that. Icon number 16 was basically Superman versus Icon. And it's this wonderful parable about what it means to immigrate into American society, what it means to have your contributions valued differently and your worth valued differently.
I was of two minds of it. Like, yes, I was happy to see those two characters finally collide, but at the same time, I kind of enjoyed the fact that Milestone was its own thing and was cultivating its own existence up until that point.
And I mean, that was something that was really huge because it was an aesthetic change, not just in the color of their skin, but how the characters were designed and what inspired them. When you look at characters like Icon, he was designed on a very different palette than Superman, even though they're comparable in terms of silhouette. There's definitely like African overtones to his costume.
Icon was a character fully fleshed out all its own, and then the crossover happened was a big thing because it helped to shake the stigma of Icon's just a black Superman.
You could feel these creators' frustrations at their careers and how they've been allowed to develop within the comics industry coming through in the books. So that issue of Icon is a great example of that.
Blood Syndicate was, in many ways, Milestone's most radical idea. Co-created by McDuffie and Cowan with writer Ivan Velez Jr., the Syndicate was made up of gang members. Its members included Aquamaria, Holocaust, Tech-9, and Masquerade, one of comics' first transgender characters.
Chris Cross was one of my favorite artists of all time. And I liked the book before them, but when he came on, then it was just like the brakes were off, you know, and it was just like this constant wild ride where you were looking at these kinetic watercolored pages, but with this style that you had never seen in comic books before.
Blood Syndicate, which was like 9, 10 characters deep. I can't believe there's so many characters. You have to be able to live with these characters. They have to be in your head. And it's kind of weird that you feel like you're talking about them like they're like alive.
All of these characters had this swagger that felt real, even though they had all these fantastic powers. And it's something that inspired the work that I did later on in life because I really wanted these characters to have a different look and feel than what you're seeing in like the standard sort of like spandex suit. Cause like, who wears that?
Blood Syndicate, man. They were not a group. They were not a league. They were a gang. And there were two different gangs that had come together that had both been affected by the same events that affected Static. They were black, white, Latino, gay, straight. There was a trans character. And they were having conversations and they were saving the lives of people that actually hated them too. There were times that they were like, I know this person like is racist and misogynist and everything, but I'm gonna go ahead and save their lives anyway.
The Milestone writer.
Let me pause real quick. They really kept disrespecting Blade and his lore. They sure did. Icon, Black Superman for my respectively Icon, is since respectfully character than other products tries to fail representation. Yep. And the thing is, like, Icon, he's not only just a black Superman, but he's more of like a Superman archetype where, yeah, he is like essentially just a black Superman, but he's got a lot of other agency about him than just being comparable to Superman. You know what I'm saying? Of course, alien origins and stuff, and a bunch of other stuff that I'm about to go into later. But let's continue. Got to pause every minute because, got to remind you this is my live stream and not just sci-fi, like Miles from Spider-Man. Yeah, Like Miles has his own agency apart from Peter Parker, though. Yeah, he may be a black Latino version of of not of Peter Parker, but that just so happens to be Spider-Man. But that kind of thing. Let's continue.
Writers and artists took full advantage of their creative freedom to tackle issues you simply weren't seeing in the comics being produced in the mid-1990s.
I remember people saying that Milestone copied Images. No, they just got their stuff out first. Milestone was 1991, they incorporated. They were dealing with DC at the time. Independence was in the air.
And these were creators who have felt repressed in the industry for a long time. This was their actual chance to breathe and do what they wanted with characters that they had created, and that they had stock in, they had equity in, and they wanted to build.
Dwayne McDuffie was a details-oriented guy, and him and the rest of the guys wanted to make sure they were putting something out that wasn't out there. They wanted to be able to put it through a voice that we see through our lens. They wanted you to see what it's like when we tell stories. So it wasn't just about some guy putting on a costume and he just happened to be black. This was a guy who had history behind him.
So even though we know now terms like Black Lives Matter and things like that because of things that have happened since, back then they hadn't happened yet. It was just Fight the Power. It was just Public Enemy. It was Wu-Tang. They were putting that language, those people into some of the comics. Rocket, she really wanted to be a writer like Toni Morrison. Like, who was talking about Toni Morrison in comics?
You didn't really see stuff like that through Captain America or Batman or the Titans. And who better to be able to tell about us than the people of color who are creating the material? That was the thing that kind of set them apart from the Marvels and the DCs and the Images.
I think it's very important to know that the people running DC at the time, Paul Levitz and Jeanette Kahn, were really, really committed to trying to be more diverse. And they both really believed in that. And I've heard them talk enough to know that it was so sincere what they believed in, and that doing this really meant a lot to both of them personally, just as a chance to have more African Americans in comics.
If you have given them pretty much editorial carte blanche to do what they want to do, they're going to do what they want to do. Unfortunately, that led to some conflicts with DC, especially near the middle and the end of the Milestone tenure. Guys like Dwayne felt this was our opportunity to actually make a statement about the characters that we're working on. They were going to make that statement. DC editorial be damned or not.
It was almost inevitable that Milestone's envelope pushing would put it at odds with DC. That came to a head with the controversy over the cover to Static issue 25.
It was a cover where the main character, Static, aka Virgil Hawkins, was making out with his girlfriend. It was going to tackle the issues of young people having sex with a candor, but being honest about it. They were going to tackle it because they wanted to bring realism to their characters. The artist also put a condom on the cover, among other paraphernalia.
The original cover showing two teenagers kissing with condoms laying nearby did see print on the inside of the comic. But what really stirred the pot was McDuffie's editorial at the end of the issue, where he called out DC and Paul Levitz in particular for interfering with Milestone's editorial decisions.
Vice President of Publishing, Paul Levitz, over at DC, and he was like, you have to change or edit the cover. Dwayne decided the best thing to do there would be to run the cover because it's truthful and honest to what we're trying to do. So that issue went to press with a letter from Dwayne explaining that the issues that they had with DC about running the cover, in the sake of artistic integrity, they were going to run that cover anyway. And unfortunately, things turned sour with DC from that point on.
That was when everything went to Dwayne was very angry that they were editing that cover, and this was back when you had those Jim Ballant Catwoman covers that were racy, let's say that. And this was two kids fumbling around on a couch in a partial state of undress with nothing exposed. There's been a lot worse before and since, and Dwayne thought it was arbitrary, and I think he felt that it was due to, if not the marketing department at DC, Paul Levitz himself, his discomfort with the idea of depicting black sexuality.
The Milestone guys.
All right, I'm back. All right, let's see what I missed. Can Afro-Hispanic count? In my personal opinion, I think it still counts as black, regardless. But it's called safe sex, yeah. Or they were just like, I don't know, maybe they were probably just intimidated by a black couple or something like that, I suppose. That is such a yeah, he is right. It is such an arbitrary thing to like really gatekeep and be like, oh, well, we can't depict this, even though they've shown worse on comic book covers before. But this is the breaking point, or this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. So I'm kind of glad he doesn't like back. He didn't back down on it and stuff. But I don't know. Maybe in some kind of way, maybe he probably should have like I guess changed up the cover a little bit, but still keep the original idea. And so that's I guess my outlook on it. But yeah, but always like yeah, but maybe yeah, there should have definitely been some pushback. I think Avengers Doomsday is going to fail. I don't know why Kevin Feige not stepping out. I hope X Men not a kill movie, but he need to go. Yeah, yeah. Um, but we don't like I don't know. All right, I am almost well. I wouldn't even say I'm almost finished with my notes, but certain things I'm almost finished. But let's keep going. We got like 2 minutes of this video.
Made a set of decisions because they wanted to get the comics in the widest possible distribution. They really wanted them on every newsstand that we could get them on, not just in the comic shops. There was still a reasonable number of newsstands carrying comics in those years. Well, in order to do that, you had to say, all right, we can do certain things inside the books, but we're not going to get newsstand distribution. They're not going to put the books out if we have certain things on the covers.
Dwayne felt compelled to write an editorial in Static 25 about that. And I think he mentioned Paul by name, and I think he used the word racism somewhere in there. And then suddenly the bills weren't getting paid. Basically, Paul was upset about it, and I think they were squeezing Dwayne out.
That was a case where we got into a dispute about whether that cover could run or how it could run and still accomplish the goal they had set forward.
And for probably 2 weeks, Dwayne wasn't editor-in-chief, Dennis was. Towards the end of that, I quit. Dennis left to go to Motown, and Dwayne was back. But after that, I think Paul felt called out as a racist. And I don't think that's what Dwayne was saying. I think he was trying to make a point about the depiction of black sexuality, but at the same time, that kind of cooled the already rocky relationship by then.
We had some heated conversations on that and other things over the years. That's okay. It's part of the gig.
Dwayne, he was adamant about what he wanted to say. If this was going to be his one opportunity to actually speak truth to power in terms of what those characters were, what they could say, if there was a story element or an issue with certain characters that he felt can't be cut, has to be on there, he was going to fight for it tooth and nail. He was that kind of guy.
By 1997, the tension between Milestone's editorial leaders and DC management would come to a head. The result would be the end of the line for Milestone, but like most things in comics, it wouldn't stay dead for long. Coming up in part 2, we'll examine what led to Milestone's demise, the attempts to revive it, and what the company's ultimate legacy is. Hope you enjoyed this week's Behind the Panel. If you did, hit the subscribe button for more awesome comic book videos. And remember to check out my weekly column at sci-fiwire.com and listen to the Behind the Panel podcast, an audio documentary series all about comics and the men and women who create them. Be sure to subscribe from wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, I am back. Me too. I predict Doomsday is going to lose money at the release. Yeah, I can't really say. I mean, it's very sloppy, and it probably won't do as well as like Avengers Endgame and stuff. And even Avengers Endgame wasn't really like a good movie like that. We were just all happy to see a lot of those characters in the same room come together and fight a battle against Thanos and stuff, like a very epic battle. But otherwise, the movie wasn't all that. But anyways, let me get back to Milestone. So, sorry for the long introduction with the video and stuff like that. I just had to I thought maybe this would be an opportunity to play this while I took some notes and stuff or finish up my notes. I haven't really finished, but we're gonna see where this goes. So for Christmas, I kind of got a compendium book of the earliest stories of Milestone. And this is kind of something that I kind of wanted because people kind of act like they just can't tell compelling stories about minority characters, or they just never existed until like the 2010s. And I have been kind of saying this. I have a saying, right, where most of the things that people kind of complain about, we don't either it's out there and you just got to look for it, or you just got to make it yourself. So recently I kind of finished reading the whole thing right on time for Black History Month. So I didn't exactly expect to actually cover this milestone for Black History, but I figured, you know what, why not I do it for since it's February and it's Black History Month, because yeah. So that's the reason. So while I'm doing the stream, well, I'm personally kind of like I do actually like Luke Cage and Black Panther and stuff, and it seems like in some of these videos when people talk about Milestone or like older black characters from like the 1970s and stuff like that, they're like, oh well, Black Panther, Luke Cage, blah blah blah. They're a little bit dismissive about them, or it's like, well, they're written by white writers, so they don't understand like black characters and stuff, and it's like, yeah, okay, so it's like, well, they don't understand minority issues, or quote unquote the black struggle, as some would kind of say. And then thus the milestone in the Dakotoverse was born, created as an answer to kind of be the dedication of black superhero representation. This was established by creators like Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cowan, Michael Davis, Derek Dingle, and of course Christopher Priest himself, with titles like Hardware, Blood Syndicate, Icon, Static, and Zobi. Zobi is basically a supernatural story about an immortal Korean man and stuff. And I'm not even gonna lie to you, I was whatchamacallit. I read the compendium book, but I kind of skipped over the Zobi stuff because honestly, a lot of that stuff seemed very uninteresting to me. I'm not gonna lie, the writing, I was like, oh, I'm a little bit bored from reading this. The other stuff at least held my attention, but Zobi, I was checked out. Anyways, let's see. What are your what do I think of the Wonder Man show? I'll tell you in a second. Hey, how's it going? YouTube just didn't notify me about the stream for some reason. Everything's going cool. Ash, this has been a while since I've seen you on my channel, man. But yeah, things are going good. Originally, I did put up a post saying that I wasn't going to do the stream tonight, but I figured, you know what, I might as well just get it out the way, because I was thinking about putting it off tomorrow because it was getting late. But I figured, you know what, I'm going to just power on through it. And as you can tell from the tone of my voice, I am just trying to power on through it. So I got a script, or I got some notes that I'm trying to that I'm putting together. I just played this video about sci-fi, talk about Milestone and the Dakotoverse and everything back in the 90s. So yeah, because I just got done reading a compendium, the first compendium book. So there's like 4 compendium books, and I just finished 1 out of 4 of the Milestone stuff. So that's kind of my journey right now of reading these comics and whatnot, because people talk all the time, oh, there's no good minority characters, you don't like minority characters, you don't like black characters and stuff like that. No, I do, but it's just like the ones like nowadays just aren't all that interesting, or they're always focused on like superficial things, as if it's like, oh, you know like as if it's the 90s, or if it's the 1970s or whatever. So why not go back to like the trenches back in the back in time to the 90s, where a lot of that stuff was like oh, on the forefront, or it was like, oh, really a like a revolution and stuff. They were breaking new ground with these or it was more groundbreaking back then compared to nowadays everybody's trying to be like, oh well, this is breaking new ground. No, it's not. Stop, it's already been done before. But yeah, Wonder Man. Yeah, I'm not interested in watching Wonder Man. I kind of talked a little bit about on Jay Leno's channel. I'll probably upload it on I'll probably download his stream and upload it on my channel at some point, because we definitely had a pretty good conversation talking about Wonder Man, but I'm not really interested though. Anyways, so let me get back on topic here. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, Zobi, I kind of found that story out of the Milestone stuff to be the most boring. Is, and then there's Blood Syndicate, which it's pretty much about a gang that kind of gained their powers from the same accident that created Static. So if you're aware of like how Static got his powers, where how Virgil went to the docks and stuff because he was coerced into joining a gang because he got bullied by this one kid or by this one guy, or he was in the gang too and stuff like that. And Virgil was contemplating on like shooting him and stuff with the gun, and then his better judgment, he threw away the gun and was actually going to just go home. And then he got hit by the gas and everything when the police were shooting at the docks, and he got and next thing you know, he ended up with superpowers and he became Static, right? Static wasn't the only character as well that had gotten. Of course, a lot of Static's villains have gotten the powers from like the Bang Baby Gas, quote unquote, and so did another group of characters called the Blood Syndicate, which is a group of anti-heroes and stuff. So you got I'm gonna probably run down talk about the characters in a second, but actually, well, I guess I might as well talk about them now because I have it right here. But you got members like Tech Nine, Wise Sun, Holocaust, formerly Third Rail, Brick House, Dog, Masquerade, Fate, Flashback, and the Boogeyman. And I know Aquamaria was a part of the group too, but I'm not really there yet. I'm kind of just got done reading this one part where she finally shows herself to Wise Sun and stuff. So we'll see, how that goes down. I mean, my friend unironically think that TMNT are black. Oh yeah. Might have thought of that since he watched the Babe movies first, where the turtles are the most black if they can be applied. On the turtles' black subject, how do I put this? No, the turtles are not black or anything like that. They don't act black, or the family's not a black family. Clearly, because of Master Splinter, they're technically a Japanese family or Japanese American family, if you want to be technical. But yeah, I would say a Japanese American would be like more so their nationality because, the turtles were human in their past lives and they were just straight up Japanese. And now that they're reincarnated or in modern day, they're American. So, but I wouldn't say they're just, they're African American or anything. There's no proof of that. But I would say the only time where I can kind of accept it sort of was when during the Power Rangers crossover, where the turtles decided to use their little hologram things to like look like black people and stuff like that. I thought that was actually pretty interesting. I was kind of like, I almost was like, you know what? I kind of like these designs, and hey, they're just trying to blend in. So I'm gonna let that slide. But does that actually make them black though? No. Michael Bay, Timothy, your thanks turtles were black if they had a inward pass. Nah. But anyways, back to what I was saying though. So yeah, so that's basically the Blood Syndicate. So it's kind of like a group of anti-heroes, basically, where these like people they have like these special abilities and stuff, and they were originally a gang and stuff like that, and now they're trying to clean up the streets, sort of, or they're trying to control the streets themselves. So they're hitting up like crack houses and attacking other gangs and the police and stuff, so they won't be in their way and everything, and trying to get rid of like crack and all that, and help out like their communities in some kind of way. So you got Tech Nine, who was the original leader of Blood Syndicate, but a little bit of a spoiler alert. But Tech Nine dies in a couple of issues where his abilities and stuff, like after the Bang Baby Gas and stuff, he kind of like dies or whatever. So that happened. And then you have Wise Son, who's like a Muslim American and stuff. Muslim, I said Muslim. He is a Muslim American, Wise Son, but Wise Son has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder and stuff. He's always like, he's always demanding for respect and stuff. So he talks to people in whatever kind of way, and he's kind of yeah. Then on top of that, Wise Son actually has a younger sister and a son actually that is actually about the same age, like that's almost the same age as his sister, which is crazy. But you know how these things kind of go. But yeah, so that's Wise Son, and Wise Son is the leader of the Blood Syndicate, succeeding after Tech Nine. So there's that, and then there's Holocaust, which I think Holocaust, he was like a second in command, or he might have actually been the leader or co-leader along with Tech Nine, but they had a falling out, and eventually Holocaust got beat by Tech Nine, and he like left the group. I actually learned of not Technine, of Holocaust when I was reading Teen Titans because or I heard of him through Static and stuff because he's a villain of Statics, and then he appears again later on inside Teen Titans where he's fighting the Titans and stuff. And I was doing some scaling with Static and stuff to see like where he was at in terms of power. And Holocaust was actually giving Superboy a pretty good fight himself, where he was able to injure him with his attacks. So that's pretty impressive. And then Holocaust kind of left the group, but he kind of appears throughout other books, which I'll probably get more into later with the other heroes and his interactions with them. Then there's Third Rail. Third Rail, he's basically this guy and stuff. He has like electric powers and stuff, and he has a relationship with Brickhouse, which Brickhouse is kind of like she's kind of like the female version of the Thing, basically, or like a she thing, where basically like she was a Latino, like a Latino woman and stuff that got like during the the gang like the Big Bang quote during the Big Bang and stuff. She got merged with like a wall and stuff, and like her body is like that's why they call it Brick House and stuff. So she looks like an actual brick wall. Let me actually share the screen since I'm talking about it about what's his face about Blood Syndicate. Here it is. So this is Blood Syndicate right here. Apparently they have 35 issues, which isn't so bad actually. I think I read up until right about here. So I read 12 issues. So apparently I haven't got much more at home. I got a little bit more to go. So that's fun. So as you can see, this is Holocaust right here. This is Tech Nine. He was the original leader. DMZ and stuff. He's around, but he don't really talk much. Apparently, he has some alien origins and stuff, and some ties to Icon. This is Flashback right here. She's a Latina woman, and then you got Wise Son and stuff. He's the Muslim American that I was talking about, who becomes the eventual leader. So Tech Nine was kind of like, and I'm not gonna lie to you, Tech Nine was probably my favorite character of the group until like he died, and I was like, oh man. And then after he died, and I mean I get it too because he kind of was a little bit more the most clean cut character and stuff, and how everybody was following him. So they had to make an example. So he died to kind of be like that moral boost for the team. So yeah. So then now you have Wise Son who's leading the team, and he's got a lot to learn and a lot of growing up to do and stuff in order to like lead the gang and everything. And he's trying to, like I said, he's trying to clean up the streets and stuff too for his sister and his son. So yeah, let me go to just the full team in itself. So the Blood Syndicate are superpower survivors of the massacre known as the Big Bang, and they all have left Paris Island's toughest gangs. Holed up in an abandoned factory, they battle to protect their territory, the dead zone, from enormous forces that may rip them apart. They've carved out a reputation for brutality that cows all but the very powerful and the very foolish. Don't ever cross the Blood Syndicate, you won't survive. Yeah. So I'm gonna probably list. I should probably be listing off some of their powers too. So like I said, I think I've already said that Third Rail has like electric based abilities. Brick House, obviously by the sound of the name, she hit what I had already described of her merging with like an actual brick wall and stuff. She's kind of like a golem like character and stuff, where she has superhuman strength, pretty much. Kind of like the Thing, but probably not as strong. Then there's Dog, where yeah, they actually have an actual dog, the part of their team and stuff, who was hit by the Bang Baby gas, and then Dog, he he's a Bang Baby, but he has the ability. His only ability really is just he can talk and stuff, and he used to belong to Tech Nine, but after Tech Nine had died and stuff, he's still part of the gang, of course, but he's just like he mourns his owner's death. And then there's like Masquerade, who Masquerade is the trans character in question that they were talking about earlier, who I believe Masquerade is also like he's a trans man and stuff, and I think he's like Latino. Yeah, that he's Latino or whatever. And what else? And Masquerade has the ability to like basically Masquerade's a shapeshifter, so he has the ability to just shapeshift into like well, Usually he shapeshifts into a lot of animals and stuff like lions. He can shapeshift into a snake, a bear, a dog, whatever. And usually when he's in those forms, he can like maul people and attack them and stuff like that. Yeah, he has no problem like committing cannibalism and all that other type of stuff. It's kind of crazy and disgusting, but yeah. So that's Masquerade, and then there's Fade and stuff. Fade, he is this he's another LGBT character. He's actually this gay man that's a part of the team and stuff, but he's kind of in the closet and stuff. But he has like time temporal powers and stuff. This is another image. So this is Fade right here. But he can pass through like solid objects and stuff like that. And this is his sister, who's also part of the game, named part of the gang, known as Flashback and stuff. And like Flashback has the ability to like go 3 seconds back in time, which I know that's not a lot, but um, but hey, it helps out from time to time because usually, this is a gang, so sometimes they do get into like a lot of like reckless situations or reckless moments and stuff where it's like a little bit awkward for them to get out. Like for example, there was this one crazy moment, right, where they like, where their enemies end up setting up like a trap for them, right? And then a bomb goes off and kills everybody, but thanks to Flashback and stuff, she was able to go back in time and stuff, like at least 3 seconds, like up to 3 seconds, and she had to think of like, and she had to do it like 11 times to figure out like different scenarios of like how they can get out of the situation and stuff that they were in, and finally they were able to get out of it. So that was that took a toll on her and stuff. She was like, man, this is like, it messes with her head a lot, and this isn't like the first time that stuff like that has happened. So but Flashback, she has a little bit of a secret where she's actually a crack addict and stuff, on the team, despite everybody being against crack and stuff, and they're trying to clean it up and get it off the streets and stuff. She's kind of addicted to it, so she's been kind of doing it a lot. I think her brother might know, but yeah, but she's been doing it and stuff behind everybody's back and everything. So yeah, I remember there was this one funny moment where everybody was like, "All right, now we secured everything." When they were at the crack house and stuff, they got the money and stuff. And then Flashback was so excited, she was like, "And we got the crack." And then everybody looked at her like, "What?" Like it was like, "What?" And she's like, "So we can get rid of it." Like, yeah. So that was hilarious. But yeah. But let me check back with you guys. What you guys talking about? And not much, I guess. But yeah. And then, of course, then there's the Boogeyman, where this is the Boogeyman right here. He's this rat-looking man and stuff. He's like literally a man-sized or giant-sized like rat creature and stuff. He's actually he's the only white member part of the team, whereas the Blood Syndicate is composed of like some black people, mostly Latinos, and he's the only white guy that's a part of the team. He kind of joins a little bit later, after everybody had gotten their powers and stuff. So he has the ability to transform into a rat, and he likes to stay in that form too, most of the time. And he has the ability to talk to like vermin life and everything. So that's kind of what he's about, pretty much. So yeah, and I think he kind of also lives with his mom. So I don't know his entire situation, but that's pretty much a quick little rundown about the Boogeyman. All right, now that that's out of the way, but yeah. So those are my thoughts on Blood Syndicate. It's pretty nice. If you like those type of stories and stuff, it's not really like a superhero type of story. It's more of like, these guys are anti-heroes and stuff. So think of like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5. You remember like with Jurino and stuff, and like his people, Bucciolati's group and stuff, and how they were like, they're a group of gangsters and anti-heroes and stuff like that. Like where they will do some like messed up things or whatever, or they have bad attitudes, but they mean well, that kind of thing. That's kind of what this Blood Syndicate is kind of like and stuff. And like the first issue, they kind of connect with like this one reporter girl and stuff like that. and then they kind of threatened her to, hey, don't run the story and stuff. Well, we will find out, and they just said that just to scare her out of like not doing it, which kind of worked actually. All right, Supergirl and Clayface is so bad I don't care. Yeah, I have a question. You watched Genlock by Rooster Teeth? No, I have not seen Genlock yet, Taylor. But isn't that one by Michael B. Jordan and stuff with the mech anime and stuff? That would be pretty interesting to watch, though. I'm not gonna lie. All right, now we're done with Blood Syndicate. What else have I talked about here? Do. And then, of course, as you know, that there is Icon and Rocket, which, you know, Icon, he's kind of like, I'm pretty sure you guys have heard before whenever people talk about a black Superman and stuff. Personally, myself, my favorite black Superman archetype would be Steel, but second to Steel to me would be Icon, which Icon, excuse me, is the Superman archetype of the Dakotoverse. Let me go to his page real quick. One of Michael B. Jordan. Yep, so it is the one with Michael B. Jordan. Let me go to Icon real quick. Share screen. Actually, before I even go about Icon, let me talk about Hardware real quick, actually. So, Hardware is actually a high tech vigilante, and he's much like Batman and Iron Man, kind of with a little bit of a Judge Dredd kind of personality and stuff. So, if you're really into like Judge Dredd and like Iron Man and Batman and stuff, I think Hardware might be the character for you. Then, if yeah, so that's just my take on it. Let me go to his whole thing. Hardware. All right, there he is. Let's see what this one video is about. Yeah, that's probably nothing, to be honest. All right, this is the character. So basically, his name is Curtis McCaff and stuff, or McCaff. He's actually the world's greatest scientist within the Dakotaverse. If you guys are familiar with Static Shock and with the earlier season, Static had a villain named Edwin Alva and stuff, and Edwin Alva was originally a villain of Hardware inside the comics and stuff. But when they did the Static Shock show, they actually brought Edwin Alva over from Hardware's comics and made him a villain of like Statics of Virgil Hawkins, where he's kind of like his kind of like a Lex Luthor type of character, where he's like very intelligent, has uses his resources or whatever to fight against Static, and does a lot of illegal things or activities under like on the down low and stuff. And he's kind of like that with Hardware too, of course, in the comics. But he's more of an antagonist to Hardware than he is to Static, though. But anyways, so just a little, so a lot of the stuff, if you actually go back and like, if you like read the Dakotaverse or the Milestone stuff, and go back to like the Static Shock cartoon, which I didn't know actually, but a lot of the stuff inside the Static Shock cartoon was actually like they actually do reference a lot of stuff from the Dakotaverse and stuff. Like Hardware gets brought up by Gear, where he was suggesting, should I call myself Hardware? And you would think, oh, that's a harmless like whatever, but if it's a reference to the actual hero himself, or like certain characters like Edwin Alva, like I said, he's a villain of Virgil's. Even Brickhouse from Blood Syndicate actually was in an episode of Static, but I think they changed around her story a little bit though. But yeah, and she had a pretty nice, interesting design in that version though. But yeah, but yeah, so that's Hardware. He also doesn't really have much of a no kill rule either. That's kind of where I bring in the whole Judge Dredd reference, where this guy has no problem killing people and stuff. Because originally Curtis used to work for Edwin Alva at his company. When he was a kid, Edwin Alva kind of noticed that he had like potential, and noticed that he had like he was really intelligent. He was like, oh, this is a really smart kid and stuff. So he decided to like kind of like he sort of kind of groomed him into like becoming like his coworker, like, or not his coworker, into like working for his company and stuff. So after he had like supplied him with grants or whatever, loans, all that stuff, and eventually he was able to like he was like, as long as you promise to work in my company when you're older. And then when he got older, he decided to work at Alva's at Alva's company, and he did and stuff. And then he was kind of like and he saw Alva, like he cared a lot about Alva and thought of him almost like his like you know almost as if he was his own father. That's how much he like admired Alva and stuff. And I mean, it's not like Curtis's like parents weren't in his life; they were, but they just wasn't as like smart as he was, or they just wasn't in his like world like Alva was. So one day Curtis was like, "Hey, Alva and stuff, can I get like a raise and stuff?" And then Alva basically dropped the act and was all like, "A raise?" And he's like, "You work for me. You're in this binding contract where you can't that if you quit my company, you can't work at any other company and stuff, or whatever inventions you make and stuff like that belongs to me and all that." Like Alva was like that to Curtis, and Curtis didn't like that. So he looked into Alva's he looked in through Alva's like dirty like through his dirty laundry and stuff like that, and figured out that oh, he's doing a lot of illegal activities on the down low and stuff. Like originally he was just doing this to report it to the police and stuff, or to blackmail Alva uh or whatever, into like letting him go. But after he had found out what he did, he was kind of like, okay, maybe I should probably like make this suit and everything. So he became hardware and went out there, and he was trying to stop Alva's operations. He killed a lot of people in his first two issues and stuff, where he was trying to get to Alva and stuff like that. And then when he pulled then he met up with this one girl that he really likes and stuff, where he like he just needed somebody to talk to about it. And she was like, "So wait, let me get this straight. So just because you didn't get a raise, right? Yeah, you went out of your way, killed all these people just to get back at your boss, just for that." Yeah, pretty much. Like that's how it was. And she's like, "No," like no. So that made Curtis rethink his whole approach to this whole thing. So he decided to actually become a vigilante that fought for justice versus revenge and all that. So he had to cut back on that, and was just like, all right, well, I'll just fight back against Alva's operations and stuff the right way. And that's how he became a hero. So he was just more so somebody that was just in it for himself. And then, he realized that there was something a lot more bigger than just that at stake. So yeah, reminds me of Thanos. Yeah, and this isn't like his actual face or anything. Like, it kind of does look like a black man in armor and stuff, and he is a black man in armor, but he actually has like a pencil mustache. Like he kind of looks like a little bit like Baxter Stockman a little bit, but the armor is like so well crafted that it makes him look taller, or well, it actually does make him taller, and like everything, even this like facial looking thing right here, is actually all like a part of the helmet and stuff. So he was saying like in one story that he can't eat food while he's in his hardware outfit and stuff, because he's got a helmet that's covering this structure right here. So yeah. But anyways, that is hardware. And then he was talking about this one story that he had one time when he was a child, that essentially like his situation is much like this one parakeet that he had owned, where as a child he had owned a parakeet, and then the parakeet like he kept it in the cage and everything. Then one day like the parakeet didn't look happy and everything, and just hated his life staying in the cage and all that stuff, and tried to escape no matter what. And then eventually the parakeet died. And Curtis just never understood why until he felt like he was caged because of Alva, which is probably a projection on like Dwayne McDuffie's part. And don't get me wrong, I'm not crapping on Dwayne McDuffie, but maybe this sounds like more like a revenge fantasy for some of his bosses in the past and stuff. Where I heard he tried to get into like the scientific field, and since they had like rejected him and stuff like that, or they wanted to like, or he never got credit for his work and stuff, he was like, all right, well, bet. So That's kind of what hardware is essentially. But yeah. But anyways, let me play something else while I get back to doing some more notes, and I'll answer some of these questions. Have you ever read Usagi comics? Kind of planning to read all the run along with Space Usagi. I've never actually read Space Usagi. I'll say that much. I have read Usagi before, especially during the time when like the 2012 series was about to end, and they were doing that crossover with Usagi Yojimbo. Yeah, I actually went back and read all the Usagi Yojimbo comics back then and stuff, or at least majority of it, not all of it, but yeah, and they're good. Don't get me wrong. Very, very edgy and dark. Most definitely edgy and dark. Which that reminds me, I actually did find when I was like a kid and stuff. I think I found one of the books at a library and stuff. Like they had a graphic novel of Usagi Yojimbo, but the reason why I don't really keep up with it, and that's again not me saying that it's not good. It's definitely good and well written is because there's not really a whole lot of I don't know, like it's just more like very episodic stuff going on more so than anything, you know. That's just how I personally feel. Like no story arc or nothing to like, whatever. That's just how I personally feel. We got 5 people in the house. How you guys doing tonight? If you guys want to talk or ask me something, feel free to ask. I know I kind of didn't really talk much about the Wonder Man situation, but yeah, I don't really care much about Wonder Man like that in the show. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, I feel like yeah, the race swap was really lazy and stuff. That's just me talking about it in circles at this point. Is like, oh well, yeah, it sucks and stuff. Blah blah blah. You know. Actually, I'll give you guys a little bit of a treat. Pause, real quick. This will be outside of Milestone, real quick, while I take some notes. Oh, excuse me. Todd McFarlane.
Rationale. Here was the thinking and the rationale to it. Spider-Man's dressed from head to toe. Yet we always talked to him, and we always spoke to him, and we always wrote the stories, assuming he was a white dude. Why? He's covered from head to toe. I don't see 1 ounce of flesh. So Spawn was always clothed from head to toe. I just wanted to make him a hero who just happened to be a minority. And could I sell that to white people? And I had those days where I was at conventions. I'm sitting in Texas, and I got 2 good old boys in front of me. And they're going, Todd, that's Spawn. He's my favorite hero of all time. And I go, you remember that's a black man. And they catch themselves because I took it away so early in the game that they were just like, oh, he's cool. His costume's cool. He does cool stuff. He's kind of heroic. Go on, yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot. And by the way, who's Spawn? He's essentially Todd. He's me.
These characters were like really in the neighborhoods that we lived in.
The thing about Milestone is, even though a lot of the characters are like African American, it was this really diverse universe of characters from all like backgrounds.
It was 1995, and Milestone Comics was at a crossroads. After several years of innovative storytelling, the imprint launched by African American creators had a real problem. A few years later, the groundbreaking company would stop publishing comics. But Milestone was far from done. Its characters not only survived, but some thrived in comics and beyond. They made it into the DC universe, and the Dakotoverse has been reborn, only to be stalled by outside forces. But despite those setbacks, the impact of the company and the visionaries behind it continues to be felt today in modern comics. Let's go behind the panel for the conclusion of our retrospective on Milestone Comics. In 1997, the comics industry as a whole was on life support. The direct market had collapsed, sales had tanked, and comics publishers were in a panic. Milestone was near the end of the line. Founding partner Michael Davis had left to start the Motown Machine Works imprint. Fellow founder Dennis Cowan would soon join him out the door. Artist Crisscross was working at Milestone then. He remembers the day he learned Cowan had quit.
I just came in one day and I just saw Dwayne McDuffie and I say, hey, what's going on? And he was like, he's not here. I'm like, who's not here? Oh, Dennis is not here. I said, did he step out? No, he's working somewhere else. I was like, okay. You all right? I'm fine. Dwayne, you and I. And when he was working with DC, I don't think there was a tie that they could break. They cared about each other too much. Between Dennis and Derek and Michael and Dwayne, they just really cared about each other way too much. And I don't think they ever really truly broke away from each other. It wasn't this major blowout the way some people may have thought it was. It was literally a situation where I came to see them and then I found that I was moving to the DC offices. And I was like, wow, it's really going down.
And that was that. Milestone would soon be over. But despite his quarrels with DC, McDuffie stayed with the company after Milestone folded. He transitioned into animation, where he would have some of the biggest successes of his career. He was a writer, story editor, and producer on Justice League Unlimited. He also wrote episodes of Teen Titans, Ben 10, as well as scripts for DC animated films like Justice League Doom.
When I started working at DC, the big reality was that because Dwayne was still interconnected with Warner Brothers in various capacities, that's what kept it kind of sort of alive. By 2000, Dwayne was working within the WB on Static Shock, and he was still writing comics every now and then. His career trajectory would come back to DC every now and then. So it was a question of, once it dissolved, Dwayne still had a degree of ownership over those characters, especially how they appeared in print and other media. The fact that there was still a relationship with Dwayne and DC is what kept the Milestone characters in the popular consciousness for well past its initial run. But I think Static Shock, the cartoon show, was the big thing that kept it alive.
The Static Shock and
All right, I'm going to take a break from here on that. I think I took enough notes for right now. Still kind of shocked how far Sonic fan games have evolved. Yesterday, they released a Sonic Mania mod, which was in development for 6 years. Nice. And the mod itself is a remake of an unfinished 2005 mod. I actually need to play some Sonic fan games, especially that one Sonic fan fighting game and stuff. I thought that looked very cool. You know me, I'm always like playing mostly official stuff, but I mean, it wouldn't hurt to play some fan games from time to time though too. But anyways, but let me talk about Icon and Rocket, another iconic pair within the Milestone universe. And they might be just almost as popular as Static. Well, not as popular as Static, but as they might come second when it comes to Static, though, in terms of popularity. If you know the Milestone stuff. So, anyways, I guess I'll start with the sidekick herself, the partner, Rocket or Raquel Irvin. Now, Raquel is actually, well, I guess I can read this off since it's right there in my face. Icon's partner and friend, Rocket has an inertia belt that allows her to fly and form shields of kinetic energy. She's outspoken, liberal, and one of the first teenage mothers in comics. Yep, she is. Her and Stephanie Brown are two of the first teen moms in comics and stuff. Pretty much, in case you guys don't know, Raquel, she actually lives in the projects, and she grew up without her dad and stuff in her life. She lives with her mom and her grandma and everything. And how the story kind of starts is Raquel, she had dreams of wanting to become like a writer and stuff. I'm pretty sure they've mentioned it before, like, earlier inside when I was like, streaming and stuff. They were saying that, she had ambitions on what she wanted to be like Toni Morris and all that. So basically her baby dad had kind of convinced her, or her boyfriend at the time, let's just say that, had like convinced her, hey, let's go rob, like, I'm going to rob this one, like, the rich neighborhood and stuff. Let's rob it. And Raquel was not exactly like that type of girl to be doing that kind of thing, but she was like, well, they got money and stuff that he can make up for it, so it's not gonna like matter if we took anything crazy. So yeah, and they might even have a typewriter that I could probably use that I can't afford. So Raquel went along with her boyfriend. They broke into this house and then they saw this one black dude with glasses and stuff and a robe, and they were like, "Oh, is this the butler?" Like he's like, "What are you doing in my house?" And he's like, "Your house," like being like, "Oh, rich black man in this wealthy white neighborhood. That's crazy." So um, Raquel's boyfriend, I think his name was Nudge or something. He pulls out a gun, and Raquel didn't know he had a gun, and he shoots what you call it, shoots the guy, right, and he falls to the ground. And Raquel was like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!" Like she was like, "I've never seen somebody get shot before." And then the guy gets up, like, "Oh," and she's like, "Huh." I've never seen somebody get shot before, but I don't think it's supposed to happen like this, where they're supposed to be getting up. Yeah, usually I don't think they're supposed to be getting up. And then he got up and then told them, hey, look, and he showed them off like his powers and stuff, like his flight and his super strength. And it was like, hey, look, stay at it. Like, hey, look, don't tell anybody my secret that I got powers and stuff, and don't even come back here. I won't report you to the police or anything. Just go. So they left. It was like, all right, forget about the whole thing. Raquel, not exactly. And she was like, you know what? She went back and like wanted to talk to the man, which was Augustus. His name is Augustus Freeman, aka Icon. And she basically convinced Augustus, like he has like great powers and stuff, and that maybe he could probably use it to like maybe like I don't know, save the world or something, or save the community. And then he thought about it, and he was like, you know what? Yeah, I guess I could probably do that. Like he thought about it, and then like Rocket or Raquel had designed suits for them and stuff, like ideas and stuff. Like she drew them out, and since Augustus here is rich, he kind of had those suits made and like tailor made and everything to the letter. So of course he had his powers and everything. And Raquel, she actually ended up getting this device, like a type of belt and stuff that allows her to like to kind of like control like kinetic energy and stuff. So if she gets hit or something, so like think like Bishop from like X-Men and stuff. So if she gets hit with like some energy or something like that, or shot or something like that, she can like redirect the force like back at somebody and stuff like that pretty much. So that's kind of like her whole thing. And then there's Icon, who he's kind of like a Superman archetype. So of course, like Superman, he's a brawler. He's got super strength, super speed, flight. He doesn't have heat vision or anything like Superman, but later on it's shown that he can shoot energy blasts out of his hands, all that type of stuff. So yeah, that's his ability, pretty much. So yeah, let's see what else. So that's basically Raquel. And then later on, at the end of I think the first or second issue, um, Icon actually no, I think it was the third issue. Icon kind of dropped a bombshell and told her, "I think you're pregnant," and she was like, "What?" And then she had to check, and she was like, "Oh my god, I'm actually pregnant." And then she was talking to her friend and stuff about it, and like she was like, "Look, it only happened like one time." Like she was like, I'm just a virgin once removed. And then her friend looked at her like, really? And then she's like, okay, fine, twice removed. Okay, what do you want me to say? So yeah. So her boyfriend got her, the one that tried to rob her, Icon and stuff. Yeah, got her pregnant and everything. So she's like, yeah, my mom's gonna kill me. Her grandma overheard. It was like, what? You're pregnant and stuff like that. And she's a teenager. She's like 15 and everything, and they live in the projects, so it's not going to exactly work out like this and stuff. So Raquel, she tried kind of hiding that from her mom for a little bit, and was kind of thinking maybe she should probably get an abortion and stuff like that. And that's where we get this sensitive subject here about there's an abortion chapter or abortion issue where she was like, at a clinic, and she was thinking about it, and then the doctor didn't give her a straight up answer, was telling her, you got to make this decision right now. Like, do you want it or do you not want it? and stuff. And then the doctor was, giving her experience, saying that, yeah, when I was younger and I was like, I kind of got an abortion too, and I kind of regret it. I really regret it and stuff like that. If I didn't get it, then my child would probably be like a few years younger than you and stuff. So then Raquel had some, she took some time to think about it, and she went to like to like Augustus about it and tried to bring it up, the whole situation and stuff. And Augustus was willing to like really help out Raquel and stuff, especially because deep down, like, Raquel kind of reminds Augustus of his late wife, so that's kind of why he's trying to appease her and stuff. But anyways, and it's just like, she lives in the projects, she's a single mom. Her boyfriend, I already told you, her boyfriend, he does crime and stuff like that. And then when he heard the news, he was like, "Are you sure I'm the father?" And then she had punched him or whatever for that. It was like, yeah. So anyway, there's just a lot going on. So so she talked to Augustus about it, and he was like, and basically, Augustus had told her about how when he was like a long time ago and stuff, he did have a wife and everything, and they were happily married, but they he got her pregnant and stuff, and him being an alien and everything and her being human, um he wasn't sure if there was going to be a possibility if she was going to survive and stuff, and the doctors were saying his wife wouldn't be able to survive the pregnancy, so they decided to get an abortion and stuff. And they still stayed together, of course, but then she died because um, Augustus had outlived her, so he was kind of all alone. So he told Rocket that whole thing. So and he was like, "Look, if you get an abortion, I'm not going to blame you." And then she was like, she slapped Augustus and was like, "What are you talking about? I want to keep the baby and stuff like that. You're supposed to be the conservative to tell me not to get the abortion," because she really wanted somebody to tell her not to do it or whatever. But yeah, and of course she didn't go through with it, of course. So that was pretty nice, and I think it's kind of it's very symbiotic to, or it's very symbolic to the relationship that Icon and Rocky both have, where it's not just like a relationship between like, oh, because I know this gets brought up a lot, how Icon is the Republican conservative black superhero, and then you got Rocket, who's like, oh, she's the liberal teenage girl and stuff like that, right? But it's a lot more deeper than that, I think, where it's more so like Rocket is kind of, I mean, not Rocket, it's more like Icon is, excuse me real quick. Sorry about that. My throat was getting a little bit dry. But yeah, it's a lot more deeper than that, where it's more so like, it's not just like, oh, a relationship between the black Republican conservative, or the relationship between him and the black liberal teenage girl and stuff like that. It's more so like an actual father daughter dynamic between them, actually, where, how I said before, how Raquel grew up without her dad in her life and stuff, because her mom was a single mom too, just like her. And then you know, um, and she never had her dad in her life. So Augustus kind of fills the role sort of as a father figure for her. Whereas, Augustus, he had lost his child and his wife and stuff previously. So think of Raquel as like the daughter that he never had, you know? So I think they both kind of complement each other in that regard, where, yeah. So that's how I kind of view it, or when you really think about it. So a little bit more about Icon is that, Icon is actually 150 years old. He was born in like the 1830s. Well, technically, Icon, he actually is like an alien, where he was like an actual, like, just an alien from like, extraterrestrial, where his role was mostly being like a he says his role as an alien was like being more of a mediator and stuff. I can't remember the race of his alien race, but he was like, more of a mediator or whatever. And then think of like Yoko Karama from like Yu Yu Hakusho, where, like, how like Yoko Karama, or how Karama had, like, his body was attacked or whatever, and his physical body was destroyed. So he sent the rest of his spiritual energy into like a woman and stuff. And she was pregnant and gave birth to him and stuff in his new form. Um, yeah, that's kind of like the same thing with Icon, where it happened with a black woman and stuff who was a slave and stuff that he had taken on her DNA and it became her child. And then he grew up and stuff, lived throughout slavery, and he had lived. He had fought through wars and stuff like that. He had opened up a law firm, and eventually he ended up becoming rich and stuff too, like a very successful law firm. It became like rich. So that's basically Icon's story right there. And of course, being 150 years old and stuff, and being a public figure, he kind of sort of had to keep faking his death and stuff multiple times, and just say, "Oh, I'm actually the son of so and so. I'm the son of yeah, so yeah." So he had to do that a couple of times. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. Um, but yeah, let me read some of these comments. I bet the Project 06 would be completed if it would blow the Sonic fandom. Too bad Rise of Larry can't be saved or improved. It's ironic you mentioned that, Ashes. I was just on Mugen Lord's stream where he was talking about Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. And honestly, he does have a very good point. I've never played Rise of Lyric, so I can't say person myself it's the worst Sonic game. I just have the word of what everybody else kind of like say about the game. And how I feel about Sonic 06, how I actually do like and enjoy playing Sonic 06. So I'm like, because I think it's I think it's an interesting game. Yeah, it has its problems, of course, like without a doubt. But to be honest, though, but maybe it might be the same thing with Rise of Lyric, where he is right. There is definitely a lot of potential there, and I don't have a Wii U, so I wouldn't know. But I do hope to like play it someday, though. So that's how I feel about that subject matter. But anyways, now that I got Icon and Rocket out the way, um, let me just continue on with this video, this stuff right here. Screen.
Animated series, which McDuffie was a writer on, is perhaps Milestone's biggest accomplishment. Static the Comic had already found his way into the zeitgeist. Sharp-eyed comics fans may have noticed a copy of the first issue of Static hanging on the wall in a 1996 episode of Will Smith's hit show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But there
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't notice that before, but that's interesting. Honestly, Rise of Lyric isn't the worst, but screw Sega for sabotaging Big Red Bunny's painful development. Yeah, that's exactly what Movie Lord had said too. He said, yeah, Sega had sabotaged Big Red Bunny and stuff with that development and stuff. So yeah, that is definitely that is unfortunate because honestly, Sonic Boom in general um, had the um, had the potential to be an interesting action type of series or like action adventure type of series, especially if it's done by the people that did Jack and Daxter and stuff. I'm like, come on, man. That's really cool. That sounds really cool right there alone. I mean, even Sega was inspired by Jack and Daxter when they did Shadow of the Hedgehog. So, just saying.
all in a 1996 episode of Will Smith's hit show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But there are countless fans who first met Virgil Hawkins, aka Static, through the animated series.
It was not a glorious financial success. It ended up working out financially over the years, largely with the Static animated television show. But when I look back on the peak of it, the Static show, I would go into schools for speeches and things years later, and I'd ask the kids who their favorite characters were and who they remembered, and Static would show enormously frequently, obviously way disproportionately among kids of color, because it was one of the first times they saw a heroic character who looked like them. We weren't using the term representation, we weren't using the term authenticity, but this really took on all of that head on. It said, look, we need to have characters who look like all of our readers. We need to have heroes that all the kids can identify with.
McDuffie was too great a talent to not have people lined up to work with him. He could have bailed on Milestone, but according to Matt Wayne, the company's former managing editor and one of McDuffie's closest friends, McDuffie didn't want to leave the other employees in the lurch.
Dwayne told me at the time, we can, at this point, get up and go sell our services elsewhere or self-publish or find a white knight investor and become a full publisher ourselves. I think it really bugged him that because we had a staff that he didn't want to let go. There was a lot of people's livelihoods depended on it, and also that what was coming out was pretty good. He was happy with the work at the time. At the same time, the other partners convinced him not to break from DC at that point, and I think he regretted that.
The original era of Milestone lasted just 4 years. To those who worked there and those who were empowered by it, Milestone wasn't a failed experiment, it was a breakthrough.
I don't think it was failed at all. I remember being a part of it, and it sparked a lot of crazy stuff. People trying to ape off of who they were, the type of concept they were putting out there. But there was a community that was being built showing this stuff. And when people started to read what we were given, they realized there was meat to this stuff that was different.
It's not that hard to draw a line that connects a character like Miles Morales to Virgil Hawkins. Now look beyond the comics at the CW's Black Lightning TV series. You can see the Milestone influence in the dilemmas the heroes face on a weekly basis. You even see it in modern, boundary-pushing comics like Black Mask Studios' Black. Milestone opened doors for more diverse comics. It proved that representation matters.
All these conversations that we've been having over the past few years about representation in comics, in genre TV and movies, in superhero films, they were doing it then. So there's all these people whose parents are like, we had this. Why can't we have this again?
You might have Miles Morales because they're both takes on the kid superhero trope, but it certainly led the way at a time when it was a lot more difficult. And to succeed on TV for as long as it did was really quite an achievement.
Why are we still having these same conversations about the need for diversity? But what's interesting about it is Dwayne McDuffie, after some of the stuff there fell apart, he was able to bring some of his characters, because remember, he owned them, into the DC universe. So I actually don't think we would have had Miles if he didn't have Static meet Black Lightning. If Hardware hadn't shown up with Blue Beetle and had their one-offs in Brave and the Bold.
Those who were part of the original Milestone experience say it was an invaluable education on making comics.
Being with Milestone, it's hard not to speak of it in some kind of reverence. 92, I was 21. I've been in the industry one way or another, some form of another, since Milestone. So what, 30 years, easy. I'm still creating. It's part of your blood. Like if this is what you do and if you love the industry, you just can't not create. Milestone is everything. It's everything.
The core of how everything started. I mean, if there's no Milestone, people don't know who Chris Cross is. All the stuff that's happened there was formulated me in the way that I draw, in the way that I see things, the business goes. I mean, just being with Dennis Cowan and being with Dwayne, being with Michael, even being with Derek, I was shown how certain things were operating and the way things were being presented to you if you happen to be a person who's a person of color in the business.
Outside of the Static Shock cartoon, the Milestone heroes were fairly quiet for a number of years. That changed in 2008 when DC brought the Dakotoverse into the proper DCU. The limited series Milestone Forever
All right. I took down some notes, so let's see what we got here. At least we know Shadow the Hedgehog Reloaded mod, which saves the nerds from going through all 10 endings. I guess the nerds from going through letting only 3 of them open the tree ending. Interesting. But anyways, let me get back to Static though. So I'm like, yeah, so of course, like I said, Static, this character almost needs no introduction. We all know who Static Shock is. He's the Spider-Man archetype, the teenage superhero, solo superhero of the Dakotoverse, aka the Milestone comics and stuff. Static, he actually does have a rivalry with Connor Kent's Superboy inside the DC comics and stuff. I know I'm not there yet because that's not covered in the first Condopendium book, but that should be in the second. I actually do have the issues where they actually do worlds collide and stuff upstairs, but I haven't gotten to reading it yet because I wanted to read this first, in order, I guess. But yeah, so but anyways, but let me get back to Static though. So yeah, we all know who Static is, but one of the differences in the cartoon, Static's mom was killed as a paramedic and stuff, where she was shot and killed by a stray bullet during a gang fight and stuff. Whereas in the comics, his mom is actually alive, and it's Static, his parents, and his sister, and all that they all live together. So that's something. And Static's mom, man, she is a hard ass in these comics and stuff, where she just be getting on Virgil and everything. Um, especially where she made Virgil get a job at this like one place, which I'm gonna get into in a second, and then when Virgil lost the job and stuff like that, which call his mom was like the next day, like when they were trying to like go to church and stuff, she was like, Virgil, wake your no job having self up and everything. And she was like, I'm like, yeah, like very strong religious woman and all that type of stuff, that kind of thing. But yeah, but anyways, let me get back to that. So Static though, so that's his mom, and then apparently Rocket's mom also appears inside of Static's comic. So Raquel, her mom, the single mom that I talked about, like with her and stuff, like yeah, she's actually I didn't know this until I saw a Static and because in the Icon of Rocket comic, like Virgil was like chilling at the place that he got fired from because his sister took the job, or their mom made his sister take his job after he had gotten fired because he kept missing work because he was Static and stuff, so he had to come up with random excuses to kind of or he had to leave unexpectedly and stuff like that, and then she got tired and then she fired him and stuff. So Raquel's mom is actually like Virgil's former manager at that burger place and stuff like that, or that little fast food restaurant that his sister Sharon works at. So yeah, and they had this whole incident where like Raquel shows up and finds out that her mom kind of found out from her boyfriend that she's pregnant and stuff like that, and all this drama going on. So Sharon and Virgil are like, yeah, we should probably go and not be here for this. So it was like that. So that was crazy. But anyways, Sharon. But yeah, so yeah, I didn't realize that was Raquel's mom though. That was pretty interesting. Let's see what Tiki is talking about. Tiki Toby, what are the Sonic games that you have that have orcs in there? I just forgot. I'm assuming you're talking about what Sonic games have orcas in it. That's interesting you brought that up because I was just thinking something like that with yesterday at least when I was reading the recent Sonic comic that came out, which I actually got issue 84 where Sage and Belle finally meet up, so that was pretty interesting. You get these two sisters, quote unquote sisters and stuff in the same room. I think I kind of pointed this out where I was like, Belle and Sage both to me are a little bit neck and neck in terms of characterization. Well, not in terms of characterization, but in terms of like how I rank them. When I did that list of like those years ago when I was talking about like best male characters inside Sonic and then best female characters, and I was like, yeah, Sage and Belle. I think I said that they were both kind of in the same placement though. But anyways, but as far as orcas that have appeared inside Sonic games, I could probably be forgetting about some, but I know it's definitely Sonic 06, and I think it's Sonic Adventure 1 because Sonic had brought this up inside issue 84, and there might have been other stuff too. And I know like some orcas have appeared in the Archie comics and stuff, and that one time at IDW and Sonic's 1000th adventure. So yeah, is it an IDW? Yes, it is an IDW Sonic comic. But anyway, and then I got some Street Fighter comics too, as well. Which finally they put out these other Street Fighter comics that I've been looking forward to, and I'm always looking forward to Street Fighter comics. But they have the Street Fighter Master series where they have Guile and Elena and stuff in their side stories. So I bought those. I already read Guile's story. I haven't read Elena's yet, so I'm looking forward to that. So that's about it. But anyways, let me get back to Static though. So if you guys remember Holocaust and how I was talking about that character from the Blood Syndicate, how like Holocaust, so Holocaust, he's been appearing throughout some certain books and stuff where of course he started the Blood Syndicate because he was a part of the group, but he gets kicked out the first couple of issues or he leaves or whatever. And then, and this man is a huge capper. Like every time he'd be like, oh, well, like he puts on this tough guy act or whatever. But man, this man be lying like crazy out of the skin of his teeth or whatever. But anyways, he appears, Blood Syndicate, like I said. Then he appears later on inside Static. Then he appears again later on inside Icon and Rocket after they had this whole big event thing called the Shadow War. So all that stuff is going on. So he appears in Static, where basically Virgil, he tries to recruit Virgil to join his gang and stuff. And Virgil's like, well, I'm not exactly like, but Holocaust offers him like all this money and stuff like that. He's like, I can, like pay you and stuff, because this is after Virgil just lost his job and his mom's been getting on him about it, about, oh, you need to, get a job and stuff like that or whatever. And Virgil was like, and then on top of that, Frida, the girl he likes, which if you guys remember Frida from the cartoon, Frida is supposed to be Virgil's main love interest in the comics and stuff. And then, well, he had a crush on Frida originally in the comics, and then it was Daisy, and then I think it might have been another girl, and then he goes back to Frida, or he ends up with Frida later in the future. So yeah, of the Dakotoverse. But anyways, back to the Holocaust thing. So, oh yeah, the Frida thing. So basically what happened with Frida was that Frida is actually already dating somebody despite Virgil having feelings for her, and that somebody is actually this boy named Larry, and Larry is the same boy that coerced Virgil into joining the gang or into giving him a gun, and convinced him to almost shoot Francis, his school bully, aka Biz Money, aka Hot Street. So so Virgil was really pissed off about that. So he was really mad at Frida over that, and he got fired from his job, and his mom was giving him a hard time, and his sister was giving him a hard time. So he actually was kind of considering on joining Holocaust's group because he was offering a lot of money. He had girls and stuff like that, like like everything. Like, come on, one man can turn that down. So he thought about it, but then that's when Virgil's better judgment had again taken over, and he decided against it when Holocaust, I think he was attacking and he was trying to kill people, and Virgil was like, whoa, hold on, I didn't agree to this. So he turned on Holocaust, and then he managed to beat him and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. So that's how that had played out. And then Holocaust will later on start his own nightclub and stuff like that. And then Icon would show up and was like, I'm looking for Holocaust because I got some words to say to him. And then they fought for a second, and Icon beat the hell out of Holocaust or embarrassed him. So, man, Holocaust, he got to step his villain game up. Let's see what's happening. What is your favorite underrated character from the Sonic IDW comics? Let's see. Yeah, I see Taylor wants me to talk about Sonic. Well, this is a Milestone stream, so I gotta talk about that first. But don't worry, I can answer some back and forth questions. Favorite underrated IDW Sonic character. Tangle and Whisper at the question because they're not underrated. As much as I love those characters and stuff, I would say Dr. Starline is one character that really comes to mind. And I do hope that, I think they're implying, and I do hope that he's coming back. I think he is coming back. And I really want Dr. Starline to come back because I think Dr. Starline is a much more stronger and a more interesting villain than Dr. Eggman. I think that he would be a perfect replacement for Dr. Eggman and stuff. That's just my personal opinion, especially now that they're making the IDW comics canon, or they already made it canon, so it's a part of the main Sonic universe now. That would be perfect to have Dr. Starline like take over, but that's just me though. But yeah, I think that's the only underrated Sonic IDW character I can think of. But anyways, back to Static though. So that's pretty much the whole case with Holocaust. So I think that was probably one of the best stories I read from this book. Not a whole lot of static stories is featured like that. There is this one story where it's about this like mad bomber and stuff. I think he has the ability to turn things he touches into bombs and stuff, and he's like off some activist type stuff where he was like um talking about all this stuff about black people or whatever and stuff. Like I can't even remember what he was going on about. Um but it was basically a very serious moment kind of thing because like Virgil is black, and then Frida, who's like his best friend and stuff, still even he does have some feelings for her and stuff. She's Jewish, so they're kind of like their parents are kind of giving them the little talk about this, that, and the third about with this guy and stuff, or what he's all about, and blah blah blah, that kind of thing. And then Frida and Virgil also had to talk themselves over the whole thing. So yeah. But I remember like Virgil was like, "Oh yeah, you're the brother that be speaking the truth and everything," because Virgil was investigating him in his civilian outfit. I mean, in his civilian identity. And then when he like caught him snooping and stuff, Virgil had to like be like, "Oh man, I gotta pretend like I'm like a fanboy or something like of him." And then he had Sharon's help to help him find out where this place was, sort of, because she was like looking at this video and she's like, "What are you watching? Why this movie look like it was shot in somebody's basement?" I'm like, "Yep." And that's how a lot of black people be talking. But anyways, let me go on. Not sure if you ever heard about the bear park ranger and his son Ash. Oh yeah, from the Trial by Fire, from that comic. Where Tango, Bell, and Amy and stuff were trying to save that kid and everything. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I have the comic myself. I've read all of IDW comics, so yeah. But yeah, so that's pretty much the whole deal with Static and stuff. Not much more I can really give you. Of course, he has a different costume compared to what he had inside the cartoon. Uh, but yeah, but those are the other Milestone characters and what are my thoughts about them. I wish I had more stuff to kind of say, and obviously a lot more, uh, you know, but I need my sleep. I know this is going on for not too long, almost 2 hours, but well, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask me before I head it out. Probably something not related to Milestone, but hey, act away. Sonic, Wonder Man, Avengers, Doomsday, hit me up. Man, I am going to be so tired, and then I gotta go. I gotta go to the gym tomorrow. But anyways, what else has been going on? So, like I said earlier, it's been snowing and stuff. Not anymore. So the snow's starting to go away. So at least I can get out there and drive and stuff. And I'm not going to be cooped up all in the house and stuff. I like to stretch my legs and get out there and stuff. That's how I roll. What else is going on? Dealing with a lot of homeless people around my job because I work at Dunkin' Donuts. So sometimes the homeless people be out and about. One time, they had started a fire next to the Chick-fil-A that's next door and stuff, sort of. It wasn't bad, and it's not like the Chick-fil-A was like burnt down or anything, but they started like near it. So I don't know what they did, but a bunch of fire trucks and stuff like that started to come around. So that was kind of wild and stuff when I was closing or I was doing the night shift. And then 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago now, somebody there was this one homeless dude. He looked like he was like really stoned. He came in, he was asking me for donuts. I was like, "Nah, man, I can get you some free water, but not no donuts. No, sorry. Even if we're gonna throw it away, I can't technically really give you the donuts like that." So he was like, "All right, whatever." He went to the bathroom. He came out. Nobody was up front besides me. I was in like behind the counter, but he probably couldn't see me. And then all this man did was like, I shit you not, he literally pulled his pants down to like his to his thigh, and like literally started shaking his ass to the front door. And I'm just like, okay. And I didn't even say nothing because I didn't want him to turn around and even talk to me or whatever. I don't know. And then he started to bang on the glass on the window, and I was about to go out there and be like, "Hey, bro, can you stop doing that?" But he left. So yeah, no confrontation, I guess. And then just today, I had another homeless person and stuff. He was a white guy this time. He shows up and he's kind of like dancing out front or whatever. He's just stoned or whatever. Then he comes inside and he's kind of being weird. And me and my coworker are like, oh, great. So I remember so like basically there was these like Muslim women and stuff. They were sitting by the door and stuff. And they were like, like since he didn't have money like that, they bought him some stuff, like some food and some drink and everything. And I saw it with like a cigarette, so I wasn't sure if he was smoking it. But to be honest, I kind of used that as a reason to just tell him to like, hey, can you please get out? Because I'm like, clearly this man is stoned. He's like, and they're like, why? The cigarette's not lit. He just has it on. I'm like, I'm going to myself like, clearly this man is stoned, and I clearly don't want him in here because he is kind of scaring away our customers and he's weirding us out. Like, I don't know. Like, what do you want me to like? What do you want me to say? Or I don't know. But the nerve of some people. But hey, it is what it is. I mean, at least they were being nice. But I'm just like, but you got to be logical too, and you also got to worry about yourself sometimes, and other people as well than just you poor thing, or have a bleeding heart sometimes. Have you heard about Sonic Frontiers Revisited fan project? It's trying to restore all the cut content. No, I have not heard about it. To be honest, I don't really keep my ear like that to the fan games too much, but that's pretty interesting. But anyways, thank you guys for coming through and stuff. I really appreciate it. Talking about Milestone and stuff. I know you guys are more so concerned about hearing my opinions about other stuff like Sonic and the MCU and all that, or MCU or and all that. But yeah, upward cheers. I hope you guys have a good night. This is John Lowe Fox, and I'm out. Peace, and until we meet again.